Are you feeling okay?
I'm just a little dizzy. I'll be fine.
Welcome to the first and only Fabula Nova Crystallis spin-off and the very first M-rated Final Fantasy game with the blood and the gore and nothing much else. It's just blood. So this is a weird one, folks. It was Japanese only for some time on the PSP back when it came out, which was soon before the release of Final Fantasy 13-2, and like with most games that are only Japan but part of big franchises, there ends up being a huge backlash, like, you gotta give it to us, you know, we got otakus in the USA too, you gotta come here. And after a couple of years, they did eventually give it to us. Final Fantasy Type-0 HD is the only Western version of the game. It came to all consoles and PC, and is a remastered PSP game. I say it's a weird one because it's really unlike. It's not Final Fantasy. It almost feels like it shouldn't be a Final Fantasy game. The lore, the crystal aspect, the fantasy aspect is so put aside, and it's trying to tell this gritty, real war story with fantasy elements. I mean, the game opens with like a guy crying, mixing tears and blood, laying back on a chocobo, which is like, oh, that's Final Fantasy, but the chocobo is bleeding out too. They're just bleeding, screaming about how they don't want to die, and then they die. And that's how the game opens. It's like whiplash. And whiplash is gonna be a reoccurring theme in this video. So you got this cadet school aesthetic. It's very brown. Everybody's in uniforms and stuff, and there's a lot of characters. You can't even learn all their names in time. It gives very Attack on Titan vibes without Titans. There are many classes at this cadet school, and you are part of the somewhat secret Class 0. What makes Class 0 a little different is that you get your magic power a little differently from everybody else. Everybody else gets their magic power from the crystal. Every major country, major nation has a giant crystal, and it's the source of their power. But Class 0 gets their power a little differently. They harvest bodies. Phantoma, they call it. It's this essence that they can glean from just like spurting a body into of blood, and then they get the Phantoma. This is a little bit of a secret thing. Pretty much only Class 0 knows about it. So they're kind of the A-team, you know. They're like the best guys, the best of the best, and that's who you play as. You play as Class 0, the whole class. 14 characters you have at your disposal, and you have to use them all, like, equally. You will use them all. So different from what you're used to. So let's do a rundown of all the characters. This is where the gameplay begins. It's an action game. It's more action than RPG, but there's RPG elements, of course. There's dodge rolling, hitting people. There's healing. It's very Dark Souls-y in that sense, except that in a game like Dark Souls, you usually have one build. In this game, you have 14 builds, and you use them all. So the first character is Ace, and he uses cards. That's his signature weapon. He flings cards around in the air, and they hover around him until you're ready to shoot them all, and they go like pew, 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 pew. There's Deuce, her name is Deuce, and her power is the flute. She runs around going like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and these little orbs come out and they like home in on enemies. Trey uses a bow. You can charge the bow, you can aim far, you know, it's a bow. Cater has one gun, but it's a ray gun, and it like charges up, so the longer you wait, the more damage it does. She's pretty cool. You got Sync, who can use a mace. She's extremely slow, but the more you like hold the button down, she'll keep comboing, and the attacks will be super devastating with her. I did find her pretty fun. Then you have Seiss, who uses a scythe. She's like a middle of the ground character. She's not slow, she's not fast, she's right in the middle. She whips around a scythe, she uses dark magic. pretty cool. Then 7, pretty creative name, you can probably see the pattern here. 7 uses the whip blade, which has a decent range. She can grab people, but I never figured out how to make use of that well, so I didn't really like her either. She's like not that strong. Then you have 8, who is your monk. He punches, and he's very fast. He's the fastest character. He just goes around, punches. I liked him. 9 is your spear dragoon guy. He's got the jump. He's very defensive. Jack has a katana, super slow. When he's got the sword out, he's just like, he can barely move, but you press the dodge button and he does the he does like a serpentine dash, and you can keep doing that, and you can like one-hit kill enemies. He's like kind of hard to play, but point is he hits hard and he's super slow. I liked him. Queen has a long sword, and I could not figure out like what her advantage was. She's like kind of slow and doesn't do a lot of damage. She pokes with it, but I never made use of her. Like every other character I used like did more damage. I didn't really like her. King uses dual handguns. He was great. You can have moves where you like shoot infinitely. You can aim far with him. He's got to reload, but like other than that, he's pretty fast and good at dealing damage. All these characters were the main crew, but then there's 2 extra newcomers who are brand new to class 0. One is Machina, and he uses twin rapiers. And then there's Rem, who uses twin daggers. They play very similarly, and they don't appear very much. Sometimes they like bow out of the story and you can't use them, so you're stuck with the main 12. But overall, that's your 14 cast of characters. I didn't use Machina and Rem much. It is a lot to manage because they all have their upgrades and their different abilities to equip. And do you want this guy to have magic? This guy can have a block, or he can heal. I never made use of blocking. I just gave everybody the heal, because like heal is good. And how gameplay works is you go mission to mission, you deploy your squad, you set your active party, and then everybody else is in reserves. You have 3 people on the field with you. You play as one, and the other 2 are AI, and you just use your characters in a basic action, Dark Souls-y kind of way. And if you die, or if the AI dies, you replace them with somebody in your reserve. And once you're dead for the whole mission. Missions can be up to an hour long. If you lose somebody in the first 10 minutes, you're not seeing them. There's no reviving. The challenge is basically getting to the end with at least one person left standing. What bothers me a lot is that the AI can just kill itself. You know, the AI is not the smartest. They can run into an enemy who's charging up an insta-death attack and then instantly die, and so much for that character. You kind of learn what works best for you playing this game, and what worked for me was not really having AI. Sometimes I would just be alone so I can have 2 extra backup guys. If you let the AI keep dying and keep replacing them, eventually you'll run out of reserves and you won't have anybody left to replace you when you die, and then it's like, well, what was the point of that? There's this kill site mechanic. When a certain enemy does a certain move, they'll have this mark on them, this like a red mark, it goes bling! And if you hit them during the very short time span where that's active, you instantly kill them. It's kind of awesome. So you're studying all these enemies and their movements and when that symbol appears, because you want to hit it. Like when it appears, you already don't have enough time. You need to be anticipating it. So if you see that every time at the end of that animation, that's when it appears. So you wait for him to do it again, and then you hit it, and like as you're swinging, it appears, and then you hit it and he dies. It's like, whoa, yeah, that's cool. You farm Phantoma from the dead enemies on the ground, and that gets you more MP. And later you can use extra Phantoma that you have to upgrade your magic ability, make your fire attack stronger, have it cost less, make it go farther, you know, that sort of thing. And you get ability points too, to unlock new abilities or improve old abilities, equip your guys with different things. It takes so long. You can literally be there for 20 minutes just combing through your guys to make sure they got all their abilities upgraded, because there's 14 of them. And the animation for upgrading is absurdly slow. Every mission you'll be asked if you want help on it, and you can either say yes or no. And if you do that, you can get these extra AI that come in. Just they'll be a random character, but they're not being taken from your reserve. So you can play with AI that won't hurt you when they die. They come sporadically, they won't always be there, and I don't know what triggers them to show up, but they just show up. And it's nice. The problem is, if they kill people, they go away, and you don't get XP. So I've read some tips online that like, don't ever ask for help because you will just not get XP for some fights. And yeah, I see that. I ended up using them a lot though, because I was already underleveled for reasons we'll explain. I did not do any side quests. We'll talk about it, but I basically kind of needed these guys for help, and they were better than my AI who would just kill themselves and hurt me for it. They're not getting XP anyway if they're dead. Then there's these mid-battle little tasks that'll show up. This little envelope will show up, and if you press the button, it'll be like, hey, here's a challenge. Kill everybody in this room in 3 minutes, and we'll give you a reward. Oh, okay, cool. And then the button is accept and accept the risk of death. If you fail this challenge, you instantly die. So I've done like a handful of these, and the rewards you get are pretty much always like a high potion. You got a potion. Yay. I risked certain death for that. I did like 3 of them and just never did them again because like I died sometimes trying them. Like it's never worth it to do that. I don't understand that. It was like a cool idea, but needed to be more worth it. So anyway, there's a lot going on here, and it's pretty interesting and pretty new. It all seems cool. You know, it's a bit like Final Fantasy 12 without ATB. If 12 just was an action game, it would feel a little bit like this. But this is where the video is gonna take a bit of a turn, folks. Because when you get into the nitty-gritty of this game, it starts to piss you off. So, I already said having the AI kill itself is a problem. Accepting the computer help is better, but you get less XP. Going at it alone is just hard because it's not meant to be played that way. So you have to balance between what's the least bad of those 3 options, and that's how you play the whole game. But you know what really sucks? Unlike Final Fantasy 12, you can't just switch people out on the fly. The only way to swap a character is to die. That's it. You die, and then it asks you what guy you want to replace you. That's the only way to switch characters, aside from a save point, in which case it's not really mattering. So like, there are sections of this game that want you to be a certain type of character. You need magic for this fight. You need a projectile because they're on the other side of a bridge or something. I'm not playing as a projectile. I can't move on. And this has happened to me a couple times in this game. You just have to kill yourself. I mean, I've Googled this. I've a lot of forum posts about how this game doesn't make any sense. we'll continue to talk about it. But this is just like, what? Like all the responses, yeah, the only way, you gotta just kill yourself, man. Just die. You just have to die. And like, hopefully there's a way to do it. You can't just press a button and die. You have to like actually get hit. So there's one enemy at the end of this bridge shooting you with like a tiny gun. And you just have to sit there and take it while your HP goes down. Hopefully the AI doesn't heal you. Oh my god. So you can die and then bring in a guy with a bow. For goodness sake, just to like in one hit, just bing, he's dead. All right, let's move on. God forbid you didn't lose your projectile guys up to this point. If they died earlier in the mission, guess what, man? You can't move on. You might have 5 people left over. You don't have projectiles and you need them right now? You've lost the mission. There's no checkpoints in missions. There are save points that show up, but if you died before the save points, you've saved over the progress and now you gotta go back anyway. Missions can be up to an hour long and you can lose because you don't have the right guy. Oh my god, that's like so bad. What? What are they doing? What are they doing? Now, like I said, I was pretty darn underleveled, like sometimes 10 levels behind my enemies in this game. For reasons I'll get to in a second, I was trying to speedrun this game. I was trying to go through it pretty darn fast. I did one side quest early on and it took so long because I was farming a wild enemy that I couldn't find. And my reward was like, once again, a high potion. And I was just like, okay, I'm not doing side quests. I already am like struggling to play this game. I'm just gonna move through it, push through it. And I ended up very underleveled. I would die 2 to 3 hits, sometimes 1 hit. But here's how I managed. So one mechanic this game has, like most action games, like Dark Souls-y kind of thing, is you can heal. You dodge roll and then you try to heal. It takes 5 seconds, so you don't want to like get hit. You want to make sure you're in a good spot. Don't risk it. if you're healing and you get hit, it was wasted, you know, that whole thing. But I found out like halfway through the game, you can just pause the game at any moment and use items for free. Doesn't cost any time. It's just kind of like, it baffles me why you can do that. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's like the reason I survived, but like imagine if you can do that in Dark Souls. Like you can just pause the game and use an Estus Flask. You can't even pause the game in Dark Souls because they know you'd exploit it. So like really, imagine 1, being able to pause in Dark Souls, 2, being able to use Estus Flasks in the pause menu, 3, being able to buy 99 Estus Flasks for dirt cheap and just never worrying about health for the rest of the game. Like, all that reputation that Dark Souls has of being so hard, it would just be out the window. You could pause the game and heal, so it never matters anymore, like nothing ever mattered. It just feels like an exploit, but it can't be because it's so simple. They just let you do it. I don't understand it. There's also a bit of an experience point exploit that I made use of. So at the school, you can talk to a guy who will give you secret training, and it's basically like it saves the game and turns off the game because it's like, in the background, you'll be training, so when you're not playing the game, you can come back and you'll get some XP. It harkens back to the PSP part of it, like, ooh, put the PSP in your pocket, and you're still getting XP, and then you'll turn back into it. But, okay, it's a PC game now. Something it shares in common with Dissidia, like the last video, is you can just mess with the calendar and get a bunch of XP. There is a cap, but you basically just go forward a few weeks and you'll get like 3 or 4 levels up for one character. You can't train everybody at once, which is frustrating, but yeah, you can just get free levels like that, change the clock of the PC and go back in. So Dissidia thought I played Dissidia Duodecim for 28 hours on a single Monday in April. Type-0 thought I played this game for 15 hours over the course of 70 years. This game is messy, it's unpolished, it's got a lot of problems. But I need to stop ignoring the title of this video. We need to talk about the camera. This camera is perhaps at least one of the worst I've ever seen in a 3D game. There's no explanation for why it's this bad. And the title of this video is funny, haha. It's not a joke. I had to lay down a couple of times after playing this game. I'm dead serious. It's the most notorious part of the game. You'd be hard-pressed to find some reviews back in 2015 when the HD version came out that don't at least mention how bad this camera is. It's the sporadic movement, that's the problem. This camera is just whipping itself around in every fight. Whenever there's action, it just goes nuts. It doesn't stop. And it's all tied to the lock-on mechanic. And there's no reasonable explanation as to why. Because every 3D action game has a lock-on. And it's fine in those games. So what's going on here? The camera will do anything to make sure it's facing the lock-on character, whoever you're locked on to, even if it means whipping 180, sometimes 360. I swear to God it does 360 to get to somebody who's in front of you. And moving the right stick, which in every other game would just move the camera, in this game it moves who you're locking onto. So you so much as just a little smidge on the right stick, move it to the right, it will snap immediately to the next person in line, which could be behind you. So if you're getting used to this game and you're trying to move the right stick to move the camera, it'll just be like, it's like, it just goes crazy. But it's not even just the fact that it moves lock on. You could be locked onto one person and not touch the controller, but the way your character moves and the way the camera needs to be focused on the lock on, I don't know why it needs to, but like the Scythe Lady in particular, when I would fight big guys and just keep spamming my attack, she moves so much and the camera wants to follow her, but it can and it stays locked on. So it's just like, somehow the enemy ends up not even in frame for this fight. the whole time. And it's moving around in circles, but the character, the big enemy, is always out of frame the way it's moving. It's like it fails on every angle. Literally. Big enemies are such a problem because it'll either be out of frame or it'll be squished up against him somehow, and my character will be out of frame. I'll always see like the tip of their head and be like, I guess I'm doing it right. I guess I'm fighting. I can't really tell. Can you see? And that's besides the fact that it locks onto whatever the hell it wants anyway. I'll be facing somebody and press the lock on button and it'll completely flip around to somebody behind me. I'll be like, I don't want that one. I'm gonna throw up, please stop. The worst part is that when you're harvesting Phantoma, because now this happens every time you kill an enemy, every single enemy, this happens. He falls on the ground. You're still locked on, so meanwhile you're getting hit and you wanna move on, but you can't because you gotta harvest the Phantoma. And you can't just do it. It, for some reason, waits 5 seconds before the option shows up. And then it finally shows up, you press the button, and it explodes and he goes away, and for another 5 seconds it stays locked on to that dead body, and it doesn't even let you move it. Like, the dead body despawns. It's locked onto an empty spot and it doesn't go away for a little bit, and it's so ungodly frustrating because I'm getting hit by other things. I'm trying to move on and this game won't let me, and God forbid you walk over the lock-on. The camera has an aneurysm, man. It flips out. It was like, what are we doing? I'm locked onto nothing. And I'm like, well, stop then. Just stop. I'm asking you to stop. And it just doesn't do it. So frustrating. Every single enemy you kill, that situation happens again. What? They didn't think to, like, that might be a problem, that they should polish a little more? Like, I just don't understand. It makes no sense why the camera would be this bad. I mean, like, even if it was like, oh, it's a PSP game, like Crisis Core was on this system, it worked fine. Or was it this bad? I mean, I played the new remake, so maybe they fixed it up. But the worst part is that I played the HD version of this too. Like, they put no effort to make this HD version any different, it seems. Like, look, this game has a lot of problems. But, like, this was the deal breaker. This is what triggered me so hard. I had to, like, I was like, please God, tell me this isn't a 40-hour game. And luckily it wasn't. I think How Long to Beat says it's like an average 25, 28-hour game. I beat it in 15 hours. That's how fast I wanted to get this over with and done. I mean, it just, I could explain to you every situation that was horrible, and, like, it's not worth it. I would go on forever, but I mean, there's like a moving train level. You're on a train and the background is moving constantly and the camera is flipping out. It's like, oh my God, give me some pills to... I'm gonna barf. I'm going to barf. Like, look, I am somebody who is pretty prone to motion sickness. Like, I'm not saying this is gonna be the same situation for you. Like, you're not gonna feel sick, you know? I'm the type of guy who gets a little sick when I'm in the car, just in the car. Like, I'm one of those guys, so it's bad for me. It might not be a problem for you, but anybody who plays this game will understand the camera's awful, and it should not be this way. There's no excuse. I don't understand. Like I said, the reviews all mentioned it too. It was a point of controversy when the HD version came out. They did do a patch that allowed you to turn off motion blur. And apparently they improved the camera a little bit too, but I couldn't find any evidence as to what they did, but apparently the camera was worse on launch. Can't imagine it. And the fact that you couldn't, they didn't even give you the option to turn off motion blur. Like, that is the first thing I do when I open a new game, right? You go to options, you look at all that stuff, oh, motion blur off, film grain off, turn all that crap off, right? They didn't even give you the option until they were begged to. They didn't, I just get the feeling they did not give a crap about this game. So yeah, I wanted this to be over quick. So let's just quickly run through the story. So a lot of the story is delivered through the class part of the game. It's a little bit like Persona, where you have the fighting missions and then you come back and you're just at school, hanging out. You have a certain amount of hours. It's nowhere near the depth of something like Persona, but it's something. It was really boring, is what it was. So the main thing you do is you take classes, which will give you like a 30-second cutscene just panning the classroom as somebody makes a joke or something random happens. Eventually you just skip those, but doing the classes gets you a boost in a stat, like a magic stat. Sometimes it gives you like a ton of XP, so like those are things that you have to do. And it takes 2 seconds. Just go up to the Moogle, press A, skip the stupid cutscene, and then move on. Then there are some little events around campus. You could talk to a kid and you'll get a cutscene. It'll be another conversation about something to do with the story. And then you can do side quests, which, as I said before, were just a time sink that I didn't want to do. And what you can do is go right to HQ, talk to the commander guy, and go like, you want to just go on the mission and skip all this? Yes, sir. Which is what I kind of ended up doing. And the story, it really drops you in and explains nothing. I said it in the intro, it starts off with this bloody massacre of a town from the Empire. The story basically is the Empire is waging war and you are on the good side. You gotta stop them, but war is hell. You know, it's war. It's just war. Beat the war. It's fairly simple, but there's so much complex Fabula Nova Crystallis crap thrown onto it, and you can't figure out what any of it means in time before the story's over. The main bad guy, the main antagonist of this game, is Sid. Yes, we've had bad Sids in the past, but this is the first time the true main antagonist, final boss villain is Sid. Marshall Sid Alstein has just a bloodlust. He just wants to take over the whole world and control all the crystals in each of the nations, and he will become an Agito, which is a thing. An Agito is like a being that can transport between the mortal and non-mortal realms or something, you know. Let's just say it's a god, because that's what this always ends up being. The cutscenes, you can tell there was a lot of budget cuts. It's really delivered like a history documentary. Like when you're in social studies and the teacher's like, class, we're gonna watch a video today. And you're like, yeah. And then the video turns on and you're just like, and then you get in trouble for falling asleep in the movie. Because it's just this bland narration over images that move. Now there's real cutscenes in there every now and then, don't get me wrong, but most of the time, these are really long cutscenes, 20 minutes at a time of just, and then the Empire went to this city and it was really bad. This is the year AD XIII 385. I don't know what the year, the dates even mean in this game. And you'll get like a flashy cutscene every now and then of like an Eidolon coming in and giant god rays of light coming down and destroying things, and then it'll just cut to black and then white text will appear. And then lots of people died, but the cadets made it out. It's like you can pinpoint the exact moment where the budget ran out for this cutscene. Ooh, the voice acting? Voice acting is a yikes in this game. It's not the worst I've heard, but it's the worst I've heard in Final Fantasy. By far.
The gloom, it's too much.
But it's hard not to be depressed in this situation.
I mean, of course we're human. Right, hey?
It took a great sacrifice. But now the Dominion has a definite chance of winning.
Yes.
It might all depend on whether or not...
We can effectively control the tide of battle.
How did you know what I was going to say?
Huh? I don't know, but I feel like we've had this exact conversation before. I have more sad news. First went to Concordia, and now their signal's kaput.
We can't get in touch with them, hey?
They'll deliver the wrong inflections on things. Because sometimes you get little voices when you're on the battlefield that'll be like, shh, shh, coming in, guys, oh, we should do this, yada, yada, yada. Okay, this place is clear, should we go there? What? And And then you look and there'll be a question mark at the end of that. She was supposed to be like, should we go there next? And she'd be like, should we go there next? You really just read this, huh? You didn't even try. There's this character, oh god. The most annoying character in the game. I mean, she starts out so mousy, like she barely says a word. And then at some point in the game, she just snaps back and becomes the most talkative person. And she says frick every sentence. She says frick. Frick this, frick this. Are you freaking serious? Are you freaking frick?
Are we finally ready for some frickin' action, General? I was frickin' born with it, but I'm no frickin' ingrate. You just frickin' said I could do what I wanted. I'll frickin' do what I want. The militest of your frickin' dreams is still yet to come, am I right? That's what those frickers behind you are saying. Don't you even think about going out in some blaze of glory, you mother fricker. You frickin' pricks!
Oh, so annoying. And it's like, yo, somebody's gotta tell her that this is M-rated. Like, she could say, you know, the real F word if she wanted. Was that too far? Was that too adult? Like, the blood and guts is okay, but nah, just say frick. Just have a character who says frick 500 times. I think she gets shot and bleeds to death at some point.
Some nice frickin' guy helped me out.
But, later you get to see a Lassie show up, and you're like, whoa. It's Whiplash again. It's like, whoa, oh yeah, we're in a 13 universe game, I think. I don't really... We'll explain the Fabula Nova thing a little bit later, but Lassie in this game are like super powered beings. They're a little different. They have the brand, but it only shows up in this glowy texture, and they fly around. They're used as like super weapons in war. They're not at all like Lassie in 13, and I don't know what Fal'Cie are like. I think the Fal'Cie are like the giant crystals. Like, they're just big crystals in this. They're not like god beings. It just randomly reminds you, yeah, this is Fabula Nova. It's like, what's the point? Why was this a Fabula Nova game? There was one mission called Battle at the Bridge, and it's like a long rung down a bridge, and you gotta take out some pillars and stuff, and like, I wonder if that was a Final Fantasy V reference. And then you walk up to a pile of debris, and all of a sudden, oh my god.
Who am I? I don't know. I don't know.
Gilgamesh again. Gilgamesh shows up in this game as being, again, one of the only few things that actually connects this to Final Fantasy. He's here. He doesn't know why he's here. That poor man just endlessly traveling dimension between dimensions, and you gotta fight him, and he's brutal. He's like, you're not meant to beat him. He's that strong. He's supposed to be over-leveled. And since I was already under-leveled, there was like no chance I could beat him. But he is there. That was a fun surprise. Anyway, cutting back to the ending, the final chapter, you kind of beat the guy and you think it's all done, and then you go back home. And it doesn't let you teleport home. So you get a little suspicious. So you run all the way back home manually, and you walk into town and people are dead all over. Just bleeding out again. Destruction. Buildings are ruined. The whole academia was raided, I guess. And there's this weird cutscene gameplay segment where you're walking in and there's this giant thing attacking you with a sword, but every once in a while it cuts to a cutscene, but you're still in control, and you can hear yourself getting smacked in the face while the cutscene's playing, and then it cuts right back, but the narration's still going. It like blends cutscene and gameplay. It was so weird, but I kind of thought it was cool. And at this point, because now Sid has your crystal, he's becoming the Agito. He's becoming a god. It's bad news. You gotta go right to him and invade his castle. He like has this castle now where he does crucible trials. Really frustrating. It's a cool idea, but then you enter these modes where it's like, okay, beat all these enemies without using physical attacks. It's like, I barely had any magic in my party, and I'm a half hour into this mission. Do I just have to reset? Oh, this game, huh? There are a couple puzzles that make no sense. It's a rough time. It's a rough time. But you make it through. And then it presents you with a question, a big question that covers the whole screen. They ask you, okay, do you want to become a Lassie or no? And you can answer yes or no. And I was like, well, there's no way becoming a Lassie is good. I'm going to say no. And I think that was the right choice, because if you say yes, I think you get like a bad ending. Again, the voice acting, like it's a big dramatic moment, become a Lassie, yes or no. Kind of ruined by the voice acting.
My knee-jerk reaction was to say no.
And then you kill Sid, you know, very basic story. He dies and then you win. Well, not quite. He does die. You do win. But it takes so much of your power. The final boss is like barely a fight because you're invincible kind of the whole time, and you just gotta wait it out. But he snaps his fingers and like kills you. There's like 14 phases for your 14 characters. So you can imagine it's pretty long, it's pretty drawn out. But it's supposed to be all dramatic. Fine, I'm cool with that. Then you kill him and you save the world, and you all go back to your classroom, which is now completely destroyed with nobody else in it. And everybody just starts crying and bleeding, and everybody dies. That's how the game ends. It's actually like a pretty good scene. Like it was emotional. I was like, damn, like this is really sad. I wasn't particularly attached to these characters, but you know, they play like flashbacks back to when we all met in the classroom for the first time, and it shows you their whole journey, and then it just cuts to the super bleak just situation they're in. They're all bleeding out, and some of them are talking about holding on to hope, and others are just giving up. One of the girls just starts crying down there, and they're all like, and they walk over to her, and they're all together in like a group huddle, and they all start crying and bleeding. It was really rough. And I'm like, man, if this game had a much more emotional story, I'd be like crying right now. It was a good scene, except for one part where they're like, this guy says we should think about our futures and stuff, and just, what's the point? We don't have a future. And he goes like, that doesn't mean we can't think and pretend that we have the future. And she's like, yeah, let's all think of our futures. And they just for a while like, yeah, after this, let's go on vacation. It's like, all right, yeah, they're gonna die. Okay. Again, it goes on, like all the cutscenes in this game, goes on a bit too long. But it cuts to credits, there's this big song playing, and then somebody comes into the room, and they're literally just a pile of dead bodies. Like these people who were full of life, who you've played through the whole game with, are just corpses now. It's so brutal. And that's it, man. There's a little secret ending that you can get. I don't know how. I think you have to do a bunch of extra stuff, but it like teases a new game, Type Next, they were calling it at the time. It was added only in the HD version because they were like, ooh, give me a future for the Type series. There wasn't. So you could actually argue that my ending was better because it actually ended. It didn't try to tease some extra thing. So the story, it didn't affect me at all until the ending, because the ending was just really well directed and mostly acted. You know, the what if we pretended we weren't dying part is a little cringy, but otherwise it was great. And it really makes me wonder, like, if the whole game was that good, how a real M-rated Final Fantasy game would feel. It really, like, when they announced Final Fantasy 16 was M-rated, I was like, okay, so there's gonna be blood. But now it made me think, like, no, we can go places that you couldn't go in other Final Fantasy games. Like where this game goes, it's just that the journey to get there wasn't very good, in my opinion. It makes me excited for 16, that's my point. If they can pull off a real mature story, that'd be cool. So I want to quickly talk about the Fabula Nova Crystallis. I made the mistake in my 13 video, calling it like a compilation of Final Fantasy 13. That was wrong. You know, I go into these games blind, so I didn't really do research for that. The Fabula Nova Crystallis is not a compilation of 13, it is just a mythos. It's just a mythology that these games have in common. So these games don't really directly link with each other, they're not meant to. At least that's the story they go with today, because I think Fabula Nova Crystallis was supposed to be a much bigger thing. Like Type-0 was supposed to be this like brand new series of Final Fantasy games and never happened. It does feel like it was supposed to be more, because this game was originally called Final Fantasy Agito 13, much like Final Fantasy 15 started out as Final Fantasy Versus 13. But that's a much longer story we can't get into right now. Point is, they were trying to get all of these titles related to 13 in a way, and it just didn't work out. Obviously, there's just no point, really. Like, the developers themselves have gone on record saying they forgot this was supposed to be a 13 adjacent kind of game, and that's why the l'Cie stuff is just kind of poked in there at random intervals, and then mostly at the end it gets a little Fabula-y, because they didn't even write this story with that in mind. It was a half-assed later thing. It's like, why even bother? Well, were you trying to get 13 fans to be more excited about this game? Especially because they wanted this to be its own separate thing anyway. They wanted a Type 1. I think they even copywrote those Type 1, Type 2. Like, they were gonna do it. It just never happened. They did release one spin-off of this spin-off, and it was called Final Fantasy Agito. It was an online-only mobile game that I'm sure wasn't very good, and they planned on porting it to Vita in a game called Final Fantasy Agito Plus, so that it could at least last longer than the mobile game. I don't think that ever came out. They eventually tried porting it as Final Fantasy Type-0 Online, which became Final Fantasy Awakening. It's just this whole history of desperately trying to make this game happen, and I don't even think it made it out of Japan. And now it's dead. Totally unplayable. Whatever that was, it's gone. This game had a manga. Most of the mainline Final Fantasy games at least have mangas, like little novelizations. But this one had a side manga called Final Fantasy Type-0 Side Story, The Ice Reaper. And it's about the commander, Kurosame, in his younger days, growing up and becoming a commander. You know, I have no interest in it. Seems boring. There's another weird novelization called Final Fantasy Type-0 Change the World, The Answer. And it never got translated, but apparently it's a retelling of like the first half of the story. The sequel came later. It was called Final Fantasy Type-0 Change the World, The Penultimate Truth. And apparently it goes in a different direction. So halfway through the story, they apparently changed the story and it goes somewhere completely different. Where does it go? I don't know. They never translated it, and I really don't care. And that's kind of the end of the story of Type-0. Whatever they were doing here, it didn't work. Somebody at Square had a dream, and that dream did not come true. And the person who had that dream is named Hajime Tabata. He was making a name for himself at the company. He's worked on other games, but Final Fantasy Type-0 was like his thing. He was the director. He often expressed his excitement for making this a new series. They had a big launch event for Type-0 HD, and at that event he revealed some concept art he was working on for the upcoming game codenamed Type Next. And of course this had the extra teaser at the end for something that was coming later. Like, this was set. They were working hard. There were so many little spin-offs. Then just faded away. Everyone forgot about it. There's been no news about the Type series since that launch event, and Tabata left Square Enix 5 years ago. Let's just conclude the whole thing. Just back to the game itself. Is it even worth playing? I'm sure some people will love it. I apologize if you do, and I really crapped on it. But this game, just taking the sickness of the camera out of the question, it's still immensely unpolished. There are so many little things. I always say it's the little things, and I'll point out the good little things in games, but there are bad little things too. And if it was just like that one thing, okay, we're fine. Oh, the lock-on stays on the dead body too long, that's a little annoying. But the whole game feels like it wasn't quite finished. There's glitches. There was a boss that stopped moving. He just stopped moving. And then I just kept hitting him until his health went down. And then he died. Like, the whole boss glitched. The voice acting is real bad. The camera is inexcusably bad. The gameplay doesn't feel like 100% right, and Like, it would be good if they put that much effort in, but then there's all these little nuances that, like, you can't switch characters. You have to kill yourself to advance at some points. The side quests are boring, and the story is just so confusing with any detail that's not just about, we gotta kill the guy because there's a war and war's bad. So many new vocabulary words, like 13, but 13 might be confusing in the beginning if you didn't read like the book, but they do explain those things later. They never explain what the vermilion bird lassie, like, what is that? The white tiger falsi, the roosters. I don't even know these words. I can't even remember what these words, but there are so many made up words that I still don't know what they are. Usually these ranty REFFOIDs end with me saying, oh, well, this game's just not for me. Like, I'll complain about slogging through 40 hours of Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon, but at the end of the day, I just didn't like it. It's just not my thing. This one's different. Like, this stuff is bad. There's a lot of actual bad in this game. And whether or not you enjoy this game is not based on, like, oh, in my opinion, it's good. Like, no, nobody's opinion is going to be that this camera's good. It's just about your tolerance level. Do you love this anime high school cadet aesthetic so much that you're just going to get into this game anyway? Do you like historical style war games? Do you love the blood and guts and stuff? Maybe all of that will make up for all the pretty objectively bad game design decisions that this game makes. But for me, it was not. Because I actually like the ideas that this game, some of them, like just having a party of 14, that's pretty ambitious to begin with. And the fact that they're all just really different 3D action game builds. Like, in any other action game, you have to basically choose a build, or even in a Final Fantasy game, like, there's a job, you have to train this job, you're not really going to experience many of the others. In this game, it's like, here are all of the jobs, you get to experience all of them. Even if you don't like some of them, you will still have to play as them. But you get to see it all, and it's cool, and if you could only just swap them out freely and really choose who you want, like, it's a shame that everything around that system is just not good. It doesn't work. The game doesn't always work. They were going in on this to be the next big sub-series. Why didn't you try a little harder? The worst part is that it took like 3 or 4 years to get the HD version and bring it west for the first time. This was your opportunity to tweak it, to fix some things, to at least polish it. And it's like the same exact game, but with some HD textures slapped on top. It's like a fan mod. There's nothing to it. It feels dumped on consoles to appease the Western fans who were crying about it right before they abandoned it forever. Nothing came out of Type-0 ever again. At least it was an interesting M-rated experiment. It's cool to see this blend of fantasy and really bleak realism, and it makes me excited for FF16. Maybe we'll see some more of that in a better games context. You're a Type-0 fan? I'm sorry. If you were wondering if this game's worth playing, I think you have an answer for that. I don't know, even after my 2-hour Final Fantasy XI rant, I heard people played the game after that. So you know what? If it's your thing, it's your thing, man. Go for it. This ain't my thing. That's it. Oh, 1 second. Made it! Zelda baby! Maisie's so excited. We're gonna go play Zelda. REFFOID is canceled forever, because I have to play this. So sorry, bye.